And that's where we come to this wonderful book of Whispers from Eternity. This is a book of prayer demands. It was written by the prayer demands of Yogananda and then edited by Kriyananda. And Kriyananda, in his foreword to this, or his preamble he calls it, says, I consider this one of my greatest spiritual contributions of my life, to be able to edit this book. And he did this toward the end of his life. In 2008, this was after he wrote the Essence of the Bhagavad Gita, after he wrote another 100 books. Yet he introduced this one saying that this was one of his greatest spiritual gifts. And he also said, I sought to not change anything, that all I was doing was trying to make it more clear. And Yogananda himself considered this one of his greatest contributions to spiritual literature, one of his greatest writings. And he said, you know, when I am only a dream, read my whisper from eternity. Eternally through it I will speak to you. And he sets out in this book answers to those questions, or ways why we pray the way we do, a whole new way of looking at prayer from the typical traditional methods of Dwapara Yuga, where it was tended to be rote prayers that were set in specific patterns of dogma that was approved by councils of wise priests and things, and people would just repeat that, and that was enough. And Yogananda said, no, that's not at all what's going on here. We are not beggars who are supplicating this God who is outside of us, who is we're trying to earn favor with, or we're trying through flattery or kind words to gain his attention. So that's not at all what's happening here. What's really happening is we're trying to connect to eternity. And he has actually 3 different introductions in this book, Yogananda does. And the first, it just says, Whispers from Eternity. And he talks about what he's trying to do in these books. He said, it's very difficult to connect with an unmanifest God, and that connection comes through connection with the manifestation of God in our own soul, in our own being. And eternity is that being that was within us, that spark of the divine. And so we're trying to make a connection between the whispers that are coming from our own soul, our own spark of God, with back to our minds that can guide our actions. And so prayer is this bridge. It's this opening of a line of communication. It's a way of trying to listen, to draw on, to make that connection to eternity. But eternity, again, it's ourselves. It's our own spark of the divine, which is inside of us. And well, what's the problem? I mean, if we're just a spark of the divine, how come we aren't always just in that? Why do we need this imperfect vehicle of words and prayer? And it's just like another technique on our path, essentially. I mean, we have all these techniques of yoga that are trying to do exactly that. They're trying to get us past that confused, chaotic entanglements of our own conflicting energies, which create this little vortices of which is us. And we're trying to get past that and reconnect to what the true nature is, our true source in the divine. And these words are ways of doing that. And Yogananda says words are imperfect. They're just an attempt to encapsulate a thought, a consciousness, and above all, in this case, the prayers, an experience that he had of the divine, an experience of what it's like to be in direct communion with that. And so in this book, he sets out all these through the words that he said he felt, he communed with. He felt these words coming from the divine. They were spiritualized prayers, and he wanted to try to transmit those to us. And he says, to do that, we have to make them our own. We have to look past this form of the word. We have to look past the ink and the paper. We have to try to get to see what's behind it, because it's that experience, it's that it's that feeling of that channel, of that openness to eternity, to our own selves, that we're trying to then bring into this to dissipate some of these chaotic entanglements of our own thoughts and actions and attachments and desires, which keep us from being a pure and open channel back to that divine. So why is it that this is such a difficult thing? And Yogananda, in his next section, he has this next section that calls hints to the reader. And he has this little parentheses, pay attention, read carefully, right here. He said, all right, what's going on here? He said, you really need to tune in beyond what your own, try to get beyond your own consciousness, because your consciousness is limited. Your consciousness is not at one with the divine. And so I'm offering you the best I can, the best representation of what this consciousness felt like to me. And I'm offering that to you, but you need to tune in to make it your own. You need to look at that as part of your own spiritual path. And he says the way to do this, again, is by affirming what we really are, affirming that oneness, not affirming our separateness. And so typically prayers can be from this point of view of God is out there, I'm a sinner, I have to, approach this, oh please God help me, I've been a sinner, I've been such a bad person, and can you please forgive me, and couldn't you just give me a little bit of this? No, he says that's affirming where you are in this confusion of entangled chaos. What you need to do is to start with what's real. The real is the oneness in that. And so it start as a demand, as if a child, we are a spark of the divine. We are a child of the divine. What's inside us is that divinity. So start from that and pray as a child would to its parents, as just with full expectation that the father, the mother wants to give that, wants to reaffirm what is in the child, and looks aside at all the misunderstandings and stuff, but do it with fervor, with energy, but with a knowledge that that is my birthright, that is my own true self. This is that unity is what I deserve. And so from praying from that demand, rather than the supplication, gets us going on the right place. Then he says you have to, in deep meditation, you have to, as much as you can, calm that tangled mess, which is our attachments and desires. In meditation, try to bring the energy up, try to quiet that interference, that static, as much as you can. I always keep coming, the image that keeps coming to me is the image from Charlie Brown of Pigpen. And we're just kind of like Pigpen. We just have all this stuff around us that's always there, all this dirt we keep attracting from the world, all these material desires. And if we could just sort of let that settle down, and then we can open up that channel for prayer for a little bit, to be able to start that connection, to be able to get past this dichotomy. And so he says, try to tune into what my experience was behind those words that I'm offering you here. And he says it's like a prayer plant. And the stem and the leaves of the plant are the words that I'm offering you here, that you can see or that you offer through your own prayers. But the flowers are going to be coming and going, and they may be different for each person. This same flower plant may result in a different kind of, or this prayer plant may result in a different kind of flower coming out. And it may be a different flower on a different time of the time. You may do a prayer one way one day and you get one kind of flower. You may do the same prayer plant, but you get another one. The point is to not get stuck in that form, but to use the form. It's what we have. The technique is through words. Use that form and try to find those blossoms, that prayer, that bliss, that love, that connection, that communication, which is behind that. More formalized prayers, such as what you might find in this book, the words that are there, can help us to focus that energy. And so taking those words, reading them, and making them your own again, trying to water that prayer plant till it gives you your own flowers. But again, that formal words can help, like our healing prayers at the end of meditation. Having some formula, some focus as a place to start can be very helpful in focusing our energy. And with our prayers, like with any of our spiritual techniques, we want that energy to be as focused and energetic as possible, because that's what's going to bust through that chaos and that entanglement and make that connection to eternity, that eternity that we're seeking to get. So focus and attention. How did Yogananda pray when he got the call to go to America? He got the invitation, and he said he had some hesitation. He said, "Yeah, am I going to fall into the pits of materialism that I'm going to find in America?" And so he said, "I need an answer." And so what did he do? He went into his meditation room, and for an entire morning, he just prayed and prayed and prayed. And he said, as it describes in the autobiography, he said, he prayed until he couldn't pray with words anymore, just with the wistful yearnings of his heart. And his prayer was until he had the sense of anguishing longing, that he had all his energy focused into that. And what happened? Babaji then appeared to him, but he didn't appear right away. And so then, this is the masters showing us this does take a great deal of focus. It takes a great deal of energy. It takes all your concentration, just like with all other techniques, to be the most effective prayer. And I think we can relate to that too, that sometimes, at least I can say that sometimes I don't fall just into the void of subconscious, and I don't just get lost in the focused rote of a certain formula of prayer. But there's times when that channel opens and words just come, and then the words give way to thought and to feeling and to an experience. But there is a sense of the words helping to channel that and then open that up, unlike just feeling a current in Kriya or feeling just a peace. But there is something there's times when words have just come to me, of just, similar to, I'd like to think, similar to some of the poetic longings that are in Whispers from Eternity. So it does happen. That can open. You can prime the pump by reading these Whispers from Eternity, by putting your energy, putting your focus into that prayer plant. But know that at some point, that channel does open up. That channel does come. So if you look at these prayers in here, they're for all sorts of situations. They give us, Swami said, they let us know the attitudes of a true seeker, a sincere seeker after God, communion. What are the correct attitudes? How does one react in all these different situations? But there's these interesting, if you look through these and as you read these, you see there's these patterns of, in his metaphors, he takes all kinds of different situations, amazing different metaphors, amazing different plays of words that Swami has helped clarify in his editing. But what happens usually, often we're in darkness, we're in obscurity, we're lost, we're in dim light, we're not making a connection, we're feeling forsaken, we're feeling forgotten. And then there's an evolution, there's a transfer of the light comes in, the darkness lifts, clarity comes back, intellectual understanding comes, a connection is made, and that light opens up. And so there's this basic formula in these prayers of moving from this chaotic entanglement of where we are, moving into that light, into that opening, into that connection with eternity. And it's just phrased in myriad different ways with all kinds of different channels, all different ways. But Yogananda says the best prayer is really to pray for unity, pray for connection with that oneness. And he shows us very many ways to do that. So it's not praying for a specific thing, it's praying for unity. Why? Because what we want to do is we want to get past this wrong thinking. I mean, God gave us all this free will, our reason, and he let us go. And that's the reason, because the question comes up, well, how do we get into such a mess anyway? I mean, if God is all-knowing and this beautiful thing, how come we're not there? How come we're suffering? And he addresses it here in his preamble, in his thing. He says, because you did it. You used your will wrongly. You used your reason wrongly. You created a karma that created these entanglements, these flows of energy. You're the one who got yourself into this mess. And so you're not going to get out of it just by saying, God, could you forget that law for now of cause and effect? Can we go against the law of karma and let's just reverse this one? I didn't really mean it. He says, God's not going to go against his laws. So an answered prayer is not asking God to change his laws. What it's asking is us to change our understanding and thus open the door for that better connection, for that flow of grace which can pull us out of that. But he's not going to change the laws for us. But what he will do is help us move in the right direction. And so that's why we pray, God, your will, not my will. I will reason, I will act. But guide thou my reason, will, and activity to the right thing in all circumstances. Because once we can get back on the right path, that's what's going to get us past these entanglements, past this chaos of our own being, and able to get us back into that connection. And there's times when we may have made such a mess with our karma, or there's such a heavy thing that, even us shifting our actions of, living in a healthier way, of not being drawn into the materialism, it still may not change everything. And there is that chance, once you have that connection to eternity, to God's will, there's a chance for a grace to come that other way. And that grace coming back can help dissolve those karmic bonds that we've created. How does it work praying for other people? We can help other people, but again, it's pray for, if it be thy will, rather than specific things. It's trying to open that channel up for them, to say, help them connect with what God's will is for them. What does unity look like for them? What is their path to it? And so we can make a difference, and it's a very important part of our spiritual path, is this prayer, not only for our own connection, but for the connection for others. And if we can pray in that way, with focus and with energy and with all our concentration, and drawing on the tremendous inspiration that's in this book of all these spiritualized demands that Yogananda has primed the pump with, has opened us up, has asked us to tune into. If we can pray that way, we really can open that channel for the divine for ourselves, and we can help other people, and it can be a very important tool on our path to self-realization.